My name's Kyle Mutch, and I'll be taking you through if a documentary filmmaker is basically your friend or kind of your enemy in this case. The background on this is going to be David Sutherland. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he wanted to take his talent and put it into something that would basically benefit himself and try to benefit a farming family somewhere in Nebraska. He interviewed 40 families before wanting to capture the story of the Bushketters, and he spent 3 years with them filming more than 200 hours of life in Nebraska. And he, for the most part, remained impartial through every session of filming that he was going with. And he spent so much time and energy documenting their struggles, documenting how much money they didn't have, and how much effort they put into every possible outcome of what was going on with their family. He stayed out of it. He tried to tell the story from his impartial person, and then after the documentary was finished, he actually became friends with the family. These were the parties involved: the Bushketters, Daryl and Juanita, and their three daughters. They're just a farm family from Nebraska. They're struggling to keep the farm going, and they need loans and extensions from creditors to keep their family farm and eventually try to absorb Daryl's father's farm, which is part of his dream. And then David Sutherland, who's a documentary maker, tried to stay impartial, as I mentioned before, and then just became friends with them after the documentary ended. Now, this whole situation with the family in question, the Bushketters, is very easily defined as just a family who's trying to make their way in the world and basically just trying to keep what they love. Daryl is a farmer. He grew up that way. At least that's what I found. And they were they were picked by Sutherland for a reason, and this reason was that he immediately knew that they were going to do very good work together. They were going to work well together. He knew what kind of people he was getting into, and the Bushketters also knew that they weren't going to get basically screwed over by Sutherland, and it was going to be something mutual, something beneficial to both of them. And in part one of the documentary, they kind of get together in, I believe, the spring of '95, which is a very low point for the family. And it just kind of showcases, not looking at my notes here, uh, facing basically losing everything that they hold dear to themselves. And it was just kind of miraculous how they pulled it together. Now, there were more issues than just the family themselves. There was issues with the crew, and a lot of them weren't really about ethics. It was just mainly about videography, and their cameramen had to be taught how to do the documentary in the way that Sutherland wanted, not in the way that they were used to doing things. Many of these guys, the cameramen, worked on several different projects throughout the years, and they had their own way of doing things. And then David and Nancy Sutherland were a husband and wife team that had to come together to make this documentary happen, just like the Bushketters had to get their act together and become one tight unit to keep their farm and their dream alive. Now, both of them had to go over many aspects of life in general, and one of the largest things that the Sutherland family had to do was go over all of the film for every night and take things that they liked from it, things that they didn't like from it. They had to analyze different portions of the day, plus looking and listening for things that Sutherland liked to do with his documentaries. It was something that was very unique to his style. And it was this uniqueness that made this documentary really, really successful on PBS, gaining more than 18 million, I think 18 million views in this 6 hour documentary, broke up into three different parts. So, what he liked to do was get microphones on everyone that was involved with the farming and everyone that was doing anything on the farm, and just hearing their sighs and their different groans and things like that, that would just kind of make this documentary. It was very difficult to do. It was very, very time consuming. That's why it took 4 years for the 6 hour documentary to come out. Started in 95, and the whole thing didn't even get done until 98, which was very unheard of. And I've got a quote here from the wife, Juanita, and it says, Daryl lives and breathes farming. There's a connection to the land that I know most people don't understand. If somebody like that has to quit farming and do something else, there's a love that's no longer there. And to me, a part of the identity of America is to have somebody so much in love with what they do that they're willing to do so much for it. And that really speaks volumes about Daryl. And it speaks volumes about how much he really loves his job. He really just wants to do it. And it's one of those things that really kind of resonates with everybody. That's why that this documentary was so successful. But now a lot of people don't really care to watch something that's 6 hours long in three different parts. So the kind of the end of the documentary shows that Juanita has left and took her kids to her mother's because of the hardships and the lack of money, and also because of Daryl's frustrations of not making ends meet. And this just kind of pushed her too far. Not a whole lot is known about how long it took for her to come back to the family, but when she did, her husband Daryl was at home full time, still farming, while she was working for a crop insurance company to help pay bills. And they actually seem legitimately happy and intact as a family. And, Daryl was finally doing what he loved, finally being able to do what he loved while not having creditors bear down his neck and just kind of hounding him for money and threatening to take his farm away from him. So at the end of everything, after the documentary's been released and things just kind of pour in, it was one of the most viewed PBS shows of all time with 18 million views, as I mentioned before. They got letters from thousands of people, and I mean thousands of people. They got letters, they got monetary donations that Juanita refused and sent to some sort of farm labor or farm bureau type of relief program. And it went to helping other families. A woman from New York actually tried to organize a vacation for the family to Disneyland or Disney World, one of the two. And another man drove over 1,000 miles just to try to give them a truckload of food and clothing, along with just some other kinds of donations. It was really a turning point in their lives for the most part. They got to keep their farm. They paid off all their creditors. They paid their bills. They can afford to do things as a family. They can afford to keep Daryl's father's farm and work it. And as Daryl and Juanita got kind of critically acclaimed fame through this documentary that Sutherland did about them, they went on press tours and got to meet a variety of different people got to share their story, got to explain pretty much what the documentary was really about, and it was about family and things like that. But you know, all in all, this mostly just goes to Donald, or sorry, not Donald, but David Sutherland and his wife Nancy, just putting in the man hours just to try to share the story of a Midwestern family who basically had everything possible go wrong in their lives, and they made it through. And it was just a heartwarming story that reached millions and millions of people who kind of poured their hearts out towards this family and realized, hey, I don't have it that bad. I could be doing this, I could be doing that. And it just kind of worked. And, Sutherland got awards, he got these kind of things. He got nominations for more awards, things of that nature. And the Bushketters went on a press tour and got to fly on planes and got to stay in fancy hotels like the Ritz Carlton, and they even got to meet Prince Edward from England, things like that, and it just changed so many lives and it helped so many different people with just a variety of different things. That's really all I got to say.